Today we're going to look at the story, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. This is a classic story that a lot of people in Western countries know. I read it when I was a kid, and I'm sure a lot of other people have too. This story was first written in 1893, so it's a really, really old story, but it's still really cute and really good, and there's a lot to learn. Because it's so old, some of the words it uses might be a little bit old-fashioned, but when we see things like that, we can talk about it, okay? So, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Oh, let me get me centered. By Beatrix Potter. Beatrix Potter is the author's name. And here's a picture of Peter's mother, and Peter is in bed. Okay. And let's go to the beginning of the story. Oh, so I have our pictures from the book here. Let's get started. So I'll read one section, and then we can come back and talk about what it says, and then we can keep on going. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. So this part is not too tricky, but a lot of stories start with once upon a time. So we don't know when it was, just sometime, maybe it was a long, long time ago. We're not sure. But at one time, we don't know when, it's not really important. This is a common phrase for lots of stories, especially fairy tales. There were 4 little rabbits. Now notice that there's a big R. This is something that people do in German. They make the first letter of a noun a capital letter. But in English, we don't really do this. But in old stories, you might see this. It's kind of an old style of writing. Okay? One second. And their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. So, not really any meaning to these names, but flop is kind of a sound, like flop. It could be that they flop on the ground. They jump and land on the ground, and the flop is the sound. Or maybe his ears are floppy. Floppy means the ears fall down. Mopsy. A mop is something you can use to clean the floor, and you can think that there are lots of hairs. So if someone has moppy hair, their hair is really long and a little bit messy. So maybe this rabbit has messy fur. So Flopsy maybe has floppy ears. Mopsy might have moppy hair or moppy fur. Cottontail. Well, cotton is a plant, and it grows like a little white circle. So cottontail is what you can say to describe a rabbit, saying it looks like they have cotton for a tail. So Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Peter just has a normal person's name, but that's kind of cute too. They lived with their mother in a sandbank. So a sandbank just means it's made of sand. Like right here is sand. You can't see that. That's yellow on yellow. This here is sand. And it's a bank, meaning a bank is kind of like a curved shape. So like if there's lots of sand in a pile, you could call that a sand bank. Okay? So they live with their mother in a sand bank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. So the root is part of a tree that goes into the ground. So there's a big root right here that goes into the ground. And this tree is called a fir tree. A fir is a kind of tree. Okay? And keep going. Oh, these rabbits are so cute. Now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Oh my God. That's not, that, I don't know if that's an accident. That's kind of scary. So now, my dears is like a very nice way to talk to people or talk to someone or someone you love. You could say, my dear, to someone you really like or you love. Like someone might say, oh, hello, my dear, to their girlfriend. It sounds a little bit old-fashioned, but it's kind of sweet, kind of nice. So the mother is saying, my dears, to her children. So now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane. Well, the fields is where there's grass growing, right? A big flat area with grass. Or down the lane. A lane is like a small street. So going from big to small, we have road, street, lane, and then alley is the smallest thing. So a lane is like a small street. But don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Now, this kind of name, starting with an MC, is a very common kind of name. There are lots of names like McDonald or McGregor or McGee or McCaffrey. There are lots of MC names. They usually come from Ireland. They're Irish names. So, and then sometimes they might be written with MAC. Like, and you don't need to say Mick or Mac. You can say it kind of quickly. So McGregor. So the C and the G kind of go together. It's like Mick, kind of like M. It almost sounds like M-I-K if you say it quickly. So McGregor, Mr. McGregor's garden. So don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Why? Your father had an accident there. Well, an accident means something that you didn't plan for. It just happened. Oops, I had an accident. But father had an accident. What kind of accident? He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Oh my God. So what does that mean? They killed their father and put him into a rabbit pie. And they ate him. Oh my God. It's kind of a scary start for a children's story. But that's what they do in old stories. Like we said, this is from 1893. 100 years ago, when they had stories for children, they would scare children a lot. Kind of funny. Okay. So he was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. So MR, just a reminder, MR is Mr. MRS is Mrs. Mr. and Mrs. That means they're married. Mr. McGregor, Mrs. McGregor. Okay, keep going. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out. So run along means like kind of like go away. Like go, get out of here. Go away and get out of here are kind of not nice things to say. Run along means like go ahead, go have fun. Okay? This is, Americans don't really say this anymore, or we don't really say run along anymore, but I think British people still say this. Don't get into mischief. Mischief is a word meaning bad things. Don't do bad things. This is like don't get into trouble. So if children do something a little bit crazy, they might get into trouble. So you can imagine a parent saying, okay, kids, don't get into trouble today. Don't do anything silly. Don't do anything crazy. So here, that's what she means by mischief. Again, not a very common word, but it's similar to trouble. And then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. So old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella. You can see her basket. Oop, I need to change colors again. Basket and her umbrella. And went through the wood to the baker's. Now here, the wood is another way to say the forest. Okay? So in regular daily conversation, we would use the word the forest or the woods. I would say the woods probably with an S. But you can say the wood as well. And so she went through the wood to the baker's. The baker is someone who makes bread, right? She bought a loaf of brown bread. The word loaf is a measure word for bread. This is the wrong, so a loaf would look like, that's a slice of bread, but a loaf is a big thing like this. Oh my God, what a beautiful drawing. You get the idea, I think. That looks like a cow. But it's a big thing of bread, and then you can slice it into pieces. Slice the loaf of bread. Okay? You cut it into slices. Oh my God, my art. So she bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Currant is a berry. Oh, wrong color again. A currant is a berry that's cut. It looks like a blueberry. I think it might be darker, maybe almost black colored. Or like a dark purple maybe. But I'm colorblind, so I'm not sure. Currants are in England, but we don't have currant in the United States. I'm not sure why. But the mother bought 5 currant buns, meaning pieces of bread with currant inside, maybe currant jam inside. Okay, goodbye, my cow bread. So, Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. So they're going to, these 3, Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, are good bunnies. They went down the lane to gather blackberries. Gather is kind of like the word collect. So they got many of them and put them together. And they're called blackberries. Blackberries look like raspberries, but they are black. I don't know if you've ever had them or seen them before, but they look just like raspberries, but they're just black colored. They're really delicious. I like blackberries. So those 3 good rabbits went to collect blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. Okay, so Peter's very naughty. Naughty is a word we use to talk about a bad child. They're bad. They do something that's not okay, not good. He ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. To squeeze means to push something and make it smaller. So maybe he has a big tummy and he squeezes under the gate. He's trying to fit through. So the three rabbits are being good, and Peter is doing what his mother said not to do. He's going to Mr. McGregor's garden. Okay, why? Why is he going to the garden? First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans. And then he ate some radishes. Okay? So a lettuce, usually we don't use an S on lettuce, but here they say lettuces, meaning kinds of lettuce. Lettuces are green, leafy vegetables. Like this over here. And then he ate some French beans. I don't know what French beans look like, but a bean is usually something like small and you can eat it. Well, whatever. And then he ate some radishes. Here, these look kind of like carrots, but a radish is a little bit different. Some of them can be red, some can be white, some can be other colors. Okay? But they look a little bit like a carrot. It's called a radish. So he went into the garden to eat some vegetables. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. So he ate too many vegetables. He ate too much. So he's feeling rather sick. Now here, it's like the word quite sick. He's feeling quite sick, or he's feeling pretty sick. Not really sick, but just enough that he doesn't feel very comfortable. He's feeling rather sick. Kind of like the word kind of. He's feeling kind of sick. He went to look for some parsley. Parsley is a green leaf. It looks like, kind of like in the back of this picture. They're little green leaves, and I guess you can eat parsley to make your stomach feel a little bit better. Okay? So he's looking around, but round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? So, but round the end of a cucumber frame. So here the word round is just like the word around. It's kind of an old-fashioned way to say around. Okay? Round the end of a cucumber frame. What the heck is that? Well, a cucumber is a green vegetable. It's like long and green, and you can slice it into pieces, and it's delicious. And Mr. McGregor has cucumbers growing in a frame. Oops. So like in this box thing, that's called a frame. And so he has cucumbers growing inside. And Peter Rabbit walks around the end of the frame and he meets Mr. McGregor. Whom should he meet? This is an interesting way of writing. So, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? This is an old-fashioned way of writing. We don't really say this very often, but you'll see it in some stories, and what it means is that, like, oh, what a surprise. He was hoping it could be anyone else, but what a surprise, he met Mr. McGregor. Kind of like that. Or who else would it be? It's like, could it be anyone else? Surprise, it's Mr. McGregor. Okay? And so the mother said, stay away from Mr. McGregor's garden. Peter went straight there, and now he's met Mr. McGregor. So Peter's in big trouble. Dun, dun, dun. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" So he was on his hands and knees. So this phrase is very common, but it's just like what we saw in this picture. Mr. McGregor is on his hands and on his knees. Like it means he's on the ground. So he was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages. Cabbage is another vegetable that grows in the ground. Usually it's round when it grows. The cabbage in Taiwan you see is usually white cabbage. Okay? He jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake. This thing over here is called a rake, and you use it to pick up leaves or to clean the soil on a farm. So he's waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" And a thief is someone who steals things. So, or someone who steals is a thief. Why is he a thief? Well, those vegetables were Mr. McGregor's vegetables, and Peter ate some of them, right? Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. So Peter was dreadfully frightened. Well, frightened is important too. Frightened is basically scared or afraid. Okay? It's like scared and afraid, but usually frightened is because of something. Something makes you frightened. Like he saw Mr. McGregor, so now he's frightened. Now he's dreadfully frightened. You might have heard terribly or horribly. Those words mean very. Well, dreadful is similar to terrible or horrible. So dreadfully is similar to very. So this word means very, but in a bad way. So he's very frightened, but you can use dreadfully to make it sound even worse. Okay? He was dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden. Here, rushed means move quickly. Like he ran. Shoo, 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 shoo. For he had forgotten the way back to the gate. So he doesn't know how to get out of the garden. Oops. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages. So among means there are many things around. So these are the cabbages. And his shoe is somewhere inside there. Just like in the picture. So here's his shoe among the cabbages. There are many cabbages all around. Okay? And the other shoe amongst the potatoes. This word amongst is the same as among. Okay? So he lost one shoe in the cabbage patch and the other shoe where the potatoes were growing. So poor little Peter was going too crazy. Okay. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster. So that I think he might have gotten away altogether if he had not... Oops, excuse me. Geez, sorry. Let's try that again. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have gotten away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry nest and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. So, after losing them, meaning after losing his shoes, he ran on 4 legs. So he was running on 2 feet, now he's running on 4 legs, just like rabbits do in real life. So that I think he might have gotten away altogether. So here, I think means the author thinks. Meaning maybe he could have gotten away altogether. Altogether is like completely. So maybe he could have gotten completely away from Mr. McGregor because he was running on 4 legs and moving really quickly. Okay? I think he might have gotten away altogether. Shoo, completely gone. If he had not, unfortunately, run into a gooseberry net. Unfortunately means bad luck. So you can use this word when something is just not lucky. He was running, he was getting away, but then poof, he ran into a gooseberry net. So gooseberries are these fruits. It's a kind of berry. And at a farm, they grow them on a net like this. And so Peter Rabbit got crashed into the net, and now he got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. You can see in the picture, there's a button on his jacket, and it's stuck in the net. Poor little Peter Rabbit. Okay? It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Brass is a kind of metal. It's like a little bit yellow and a little bit brown. Okay? Keep going. So poor Peter Rabbit is stuck in the net. Oh no. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Now this part's probably the hardest part of the story. Peter gave himself up for lost. So he gave himself up. Like, oh, you can have me. So he thinks he's stuck forever. He says, oh, I give up. So you probably learned give up, which means quit. Or say, oh, I lose. You give up. He gave himself up, meaning he says, I lose. You can take me away, Mr. McGregor. So he gave himself up for lost, meaning that he says, forget it, I give up, and I'm lost forever. He thinks he's not going to be able to go back home. Okay? And then he shed big tears. Tears, maybe you know 1 tear is 1 drop of crying. If you cry, tears go down your face. The word shed means to like make something go away. So the tears go away from your eyes. But that actually means crying. To shed tears means the tears are going out of your eye. So Peter shed big tears. Push, 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 push. Is that what tears sound like? I don't know. So poor Peter thinks he's stuck and he's never going to be free. So he shed big tears. Oh! And his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows. A sob is the sound of someone crying. When someone cries and they go, oh, that is sobbing. So sob or sobbing. It's the crying sound that people make. Oh. His sobs were overheard. Now, this is different than just heard. If you hear something, maybe you're listening to it. But if you overheard something, that means you weren't paying attention. Maybe you were busy doing something else, but then you heard something over what you were doing. You overheard something. So let's say you and me are having lunch together. We're sitting at a table, eating lunch and talking to each other. But people at the next table are talking about something, and we might overhear their story. We're not trying to listen, but we hear it over our lunch. Okay? Does that make sense? It's like you listen to something by accident. So his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows. So sparrows are this kind of bird, and they just heard that he was crying. They were eating and overheard his sobs. And so the sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement. In great excitement just means they're very excited, right? And then they implored him to exert himself. Now, people don't usually say this, but implore is like the word insist, which means you tell someone they need to do something. You really need to help yourself, Peter. They implored him, okay? Or they insisted, you really should do it. Don't just give up. And what did they implore him to do? So they told him to exert himself. To exert yourself means use effort. Like, use a lot of effort. Like, don't just give up. Work hard. Push. You can do it. Just use your muscles. Exert yourself. Okay? This word is could be used at your office. Let's say someone's being a little bit lazy and they're relaxing at work. And then the boss tells them to exert themselves. It's like, okay, you're too relaxed. You need to push yourself and work harder. Okay? So these sparrows implored Peter to exert himself. They tell him, don't just lay there. Don't give up. You got to work hard and you can get out. Okay. Let's see. I think we should stop there for now. Okay. So Peter gets stuck in the net at Mr. McGregor's farm. And you can see in this picture, Mr. McGregor is coming to try to catch Peter Rabbit. He has this thing that he's going to put over Peter Rabbit's head, but whew, Peter Rabbit took off his jacket and he ran away. So I think we can stop here for now. We can save the other half of the story for next time. Okay? So Peter Rabbit, he's kind of a naughty rabbit, but he just wanted some snacks. He wanted to eat some lettuce, some radishes, and other yummy things. And but then he got stuck in this net. But he was able to get out, but Mr. McGregor, the farmer, is still coming after him. So do you think Peter Rabbit will be able to get away? Or will he end up in a pie just like his father? I don't know. So let's stop here for today. Oh, actually, what I'll do is we can go back and reread the parts we've already read and then save the second half for next time. Okay? So let's go to the beginning. We can read it smoothly in one go, and maybe you can listen along and follow along, and you'll understand better this time. So, The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank, underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor." Oh my God. "Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Dun dun dun! Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew into him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. "You can do it." So that's the first half of our story of Peter Rabbit, and we can stop there. Next time we can explore more about what Peter does as he's running away from Mr. McGregor, and will he get away from Mr. McGregor, or will he end up in a pie just like his father? That's kind of a scary thing to hear. Okay, and so at this point, we can stop for today. I hope you had a good time, and I'll see you next time for part 2. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.